The Forge of Magic. The moon hung high in the sky, casting its silvery glow over the mountains. Deep within the heart of a cavern, where the fire never ceased to burn, Hephaestus labored in his forge. His hammer rang out, striking molten metal with precision, his skilled hands shaping weapons that could cut through gods and mortals alike. The sweat on his brow caught the glow of the flames, but he did not stop. He never stopped. Creation was his calling, his obsession. But tonight was different. There, at the mouth of the forge, where the shadows bent and shifted unnaturally, stood Hecate. Her dark cloak blended with the night, her presence an ethereal one, flickering between the worlds of the living and the dead. She had come silently, as she always did, but Hephaestus had felt her arrival the moment she stepped into the warmth of his forge. His hammer stilled mid-air, his hands instinctively pausing, as if the very air had shifted in her wake. He turned toward her, his sharp gaze catching the gleam of her silver eyes. "Hecate," Hephaestus greeted her, his voice steady, yet there was something softer in it tonight, something he could not place. "What brings you here?" Her lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. She was no stranger to the fire and the forge, but their worlds had always seemed so far apart. Magic and metal, spirit and flesh. "I need something, Hephaestus," she said, her voice like the wind brushing over still water, calm and infinite. "I need your craft." He raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "My craft? You know I do not make toys for gods or gifts for witches." Hecate's gaze was steady, unyielding. She stepped closer, the shadows following her every movement. Her eyes flickered to the molten metal before them, then back to him. "I need something more than mere weapons. I need something that can bend fate itself, something that will change the very course of the future," she explained, her voice laced with mystery. Hephaestus studied her for a moment, the way her power seemed to pulse in the air, the way she seemed to exist outside the constraints of time. She was a creature of magic, a being who could weave the essence of life with a single word, yet she sought his craft, the art of shaping the world with physical form. It was a union of opposites. He gestured to the forge, the fire licking at the air, the heat palpable. "You want me to shape something that holds your magic? A conduit?" Hecate nodded. "Yes, a weapon that holds the essence of life. A tool that can alter the fabric of reality itself. Your skill and my power combined." Hephaestus lowered his hammer and stepped closer to her. Their differences were vast. He, the god of fire and forge, bound by the laws of the physical world. She, the goddess of magic and transitions, capable of moving between the realms of the living and the dead. Yet as they stood together in the glow of the fire, he couldn't help but feel the spark between them, an attraction not just of the physical realm, but of their souls. He had always believed that creation was a solitary pursuit, that the forge was where his soul was most alive. But something about Hecate's presence made him reconsider, made him question the nature of creation itself. Could their forces truly complement one another? Could magic and craftsmanship be entwined in a way that was more than the sum of its parts? "You can't be serious," he muttered under his breath. "How can magic and metal come together? The two are worlds apart." Hecate smiled, that knowing, serene smile that only she could wear. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you were simply afraid to let your craft reach beyond the boundaries you have set for yourself." The words stung more than he expected. Hephaestus glanced away, unwilling to show how deeply they cut. He prided himself on being a creator, a master of his craft. But Hecate spoke the truth. He had confined his work to what was tangible, what was known. Could he truly create something that was not bound by the physical? Her voice broke through his thoughts, low and hypnotic. "There is magic in your hands, Hephaestus. You've always known it. You shape not just metal but the essence of existence itself. You create things of power. Why deny it?" The forge flickered brighter, as if responding to her words. Hephaestus looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw not just a goddess of the night but someone who understood the art of creation as deeply as he did. She was not merely asking for his craft. She was asking him to expand, to grow beyond what he thought possible. With a heavy breath, Hephaestus finally spoke, his voice low but resolute. "What do you need?" Hecate's smile deepened, and the air around them seemed to pulse with possibility. "A sword," she said simply. "One that does not just cleave flesh, but fate itself." Hephaestus nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her request settle into him. His hands, which had shaped so many weapons of war, would now shape something far more dangerous, a weapon of magic, a weapon that could alter reality. For the first time in ages, he felt his pulse quicken with anticipation. "I will forge it for you," Hephaestus said, stepping back to his anvil. "But know this, Hecate, I create with fire, with earth, and you create with shadows, with the unseen. If we are to combine our crafts, we must respect each other's domains." "I respect your craft, Hephaestus," Hecate replied, her voice a whisper of wind. "And I trust you with this, but know this. In my hands, your creation will be something more than you ever imagined." And so they began, the goddess of magic and the god of the forge, two creators united by their craft, yet divided by the realms they controlled. Together, they would forge not just a weapon, but a new kind of power, one that blended the forces of magic and metal, fate and fire. As Hephaestus shaped the blade, Hecate whispered incantations, weaving the very essence of life into its core. The sword pulsed with a strange energy, flickering with shadows and fire, as if it existed between worlds. The union of their powers was a delicate thing, fragile and beautiful, like the creation of the world itself. In the quiet that followed, Hephaestus looked at her, not just as a goddess, but as something more. She had unlocked something in him, a new way of seeing the world. Perhaps there was more to creation than he had ever realized, and perhaps in time, their bond would grow into something even more powerful than either of them could have ever dreamed. As she watched Hephaestus work his forge, shaping metal with expert hands, she no longer saw him as a god, but as a man whose presence was undeniable. His skin gleamed like gold. Each movement of his arms and the curve of his muscles mesmerized her. She took him, gaze lingering, absorbing every detail of his form. Deep within her something stirred, a feeling she hadn't experienced in centuries. A longing, no, a yearning for something more, something beyond the realm of gods and immortals. For the briefest moment, she imagined his strong arms encircling her, a comfort like moonlight, soft, tender, yet impossibly distant. But the thought was a fleeting indulgence, a reminder of the vast chasm between their worlds. She forced it away, burying the longing deep within her. Hephaestus finished his work, stepping back to admire the blade before him. It was not yet complete, but he was satisfied with how it was shaping up. As his eyes lifted, they met hers. The goddess was staring at him, her gaze intense, filled with a longing he couldn't ignore. But just as quickly as he noticed it, the look faded, slipping away like mist in the morning sun. He smiled to himself, a quiet amusement playing on his lips. Her beauty was beyond words, an ethereal thing that could never truly be captured. Hephaestus spoke, his voice low and warm. "If it pleases you to look, then look." His smile was both teasing and knowing. Hecate, caught off guard, quickly averted her gaze, her cheeks flushed with a mix of surprise and confusion. She fumbled over her words, struggling to regain composure. I didn't mean to," she stammered, her usual calm shaken. Hephaestus laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that filled the space between them. He laid the blade down with care, then walked toward her, each step deliberate, drawing her in. For a moment, Hecate felt as though she were no longer a goddess, but a mortal, lost, unsure of what to do or say. Should she turn and flee, like a frightened little mouse? But before she could even gather her thoughts, his arms were around her, pulling her closer, wrapping her in a warmth that felt as inevitable as the forge's fire. Then his lips met hers, and in that instant, the goddess who had never known weakness melted like metal to flame. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you can catch the 5th part of the story.